Hi all, my name is Mara and I'm part of the My Jewish Learning team. I'm really thrilled to be joined today by Donnie Rothstein and Anna Maria, and we are going to go on a virtual walking tour of Jewish Krakow. Many of our tours are walking, some of them are more of a presentation. As you all know, it's quite hot, so we are particularly thankful for Anna Maria for doing this in today's heat, and I've compelled her to take a sip of water, so please excuse that. And technology sometimes doesn't always go to plan in the heat. So just as a small caveat, if things are interrupted, Anna Maria will continue the recording, and of course we will send that out to all of our those who've registered, which is you. So before we hand it over to Anna Maria to give us a wonderful learning experience, I want to give Donnie a few minutes to give a more proper introduction. We know that you will all have questions. Feel free to message myself or Donnie, and we will be able to address as many as we can in the allotted time. So thank you all for being here.
Great. Thank you so much, Mara. And happy summer for those who are in the Northern Hemisphere to everyone. And again, reiterating, hoping everyone is staying cool. I know it's very hot in many different parts of the world, including North America. So we're just making sure everyone is staying healthy and safe out there. Really looking forward to going on this virtual tour, which isn't as virtual as others have been. We're actually live with Anna Maria, one of our fantastic guides who's walking through the Jewish quarter of Kazimierz, and I'm getting better and better at pronouncing that. I hope Anna Maria, you'll correct me. Yes. As we go on. Anna Maria is a licensed tour guide in Krakow with over 7 years of experience in providing meaningful tours to international visitors from all over Poland and the world. Her specialty is the Jewish history of Poland, and she has quite a fantastic personal story that we hope to hear more of towards the end of her tour today. Indeed, we're going to be walking through Kazimierz, which is the Jewish district and once was the center of Jewish life in Krakow for over 500 years until World War II, and rediscovered in the 1990s, thanks to Steven Spielberg's Schindler's List and the Jewish Cultural Festival. Kazimierz has become a popular tourist destination for visitors, as I said, all over the world. So we're really excited to be walking with Anna Maria. We'll just remind everyone to please put your questions for her to either myself or Tamara, and we'll have about 10 minutes or so at the end of the tour to get those. If we don't get to all of them, we'll be happy to facilitate an email so you can stay in touch and hopefully go and visit Anna Maria in Krakow in person. So without further ado, Anna Maria, the proverbial microphone is all yours. Take us away.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this amazing introduction. Thank you so much for this opportunity to be able to take you for the tour around Kazimierz, which is definitely my favorite district here in the beautiful city of Kraków, in the former capital of Poland. Thank you, Danny, for the introduction. I just wanted to add that this is what I do for a living. This is my biggest passion: guiding, sharing stories about Kraków, about Poland, about our amazing history, and especially Jewish history of Poland, with people from all over the world. So I am extremely happy once again to give you this virtual tour. But of course, I'm really hoping that at least some of you will be tempted to visit us, to come to Kraków, to see yourself how beautiful this city is. So without further ado, let me start with a little bit of historical introduction. Because as I said, we are now in Kazimierz. Kazimierz is the name of the district of Kraków, but Kazimierz used to be a separate city. So we are now just 15 minutes walking distance from the main market square of Kraków, which is the biggest medieval square in Europe. Kraków was the capital of Poland for about 500 years before it was moved to Warsaw, which is currently our capital for many years already. But Kraków used to be one of the most important Polish cities for centuries. So that's why there were many other cities and towns and villages being established around Krakow. And this is exactly what happened here. So as I will continue with my historical introduction, you can actually have a chance to look at the streets of lovely Kazimierz. So this city, where now a district, the city in the past, was established in year 1335 by a very famous Polish king, Kazimierz the Great. King Kazimierz the Great, he was the only one in our history with this nickname, the Great. So he definitely did a lot of great things for this country. He was a king from 1335 till 1370, so for a very, very long time. And his goal was to develop the country. His goal was to make Poland one of the most powerful and significant European countries. So that is the reason why he established the first university here in Poland, why he was a founder of many new cities and towns around the country. And that is the reason why he decided to invite to Poland a lot of newcomers, a lot of new citizens, a lot of new settlers to Poland. And that is exactly what happened with the Jewish community. Yes, we had a lot of Jews coming to Poland already in medieval times. Many of them were coming here because of the economical reasons, so because of trade. They were merchants, traders, bankers. And then another big reason why people were coming here was connected to religion, to lack of tolerance to different religions in the other European countries, especially during the time of Crusades. Poland was this very tolerant country during that time, and there was even periods in our history when Poland was called Paradisus Judaeorum, so the Jewish paradise. I know it's very hard to imagine nowadays that this is what Poland was called at some point, but if you would think about even the legislation, yes, in the 13th century, in the city of Kalisz, small Polish city, there was a statute of the city issued where Jews were granted full civil rights, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, and even separate jurisdiction. So if you think about these Polish towns and cities and villages and big towns like Kraków, Jews were granted a lot of rights, and that's why they were coming here. So when in 1335, the city of Kazimierz was established, it was open for all the new people arriving. And quickly, the city developed two districts. There was a Jewish part and a Christian part here in Kazimierz. Today, of course, we are going to be focusing on the Jewish part, but there is beautiful Christian part of Kazimierz as well. This used to be a separate city till the beginning of the 19th century, when it was eventually annexed to Kraków as a district. Until today, Kazimierz is very well known among locals, among visitors, among tourists, as the Jewish district of Kraków. Because, ladies and gentlemen, what we are looking at right now, this was the center of Jewish life before the war. This was center of administration. This was center of a trade. This was center of religious life. The small street, which now unfortunately is full of cars going back and forth, this was really where the Jewish life of Kazimierz was happening, and Jewish life of Kraków was happening. So even now, when you are looking at this little green area surrounded by a fence, you can see that this fence has very specific shape. This is, of course, shape of menorah. So what we are looking at right now, this was the area of the first Jewish cemetery here in Kazimierz. As you can see, there are no tombstones which survive till now, but we know that this was the Jewish cemetery. Nothing can be built here. That's why this area till today is surrounded by a fence. It looks like it was in the middle of the city, but the buildings just behind it over there, that used to be the border. So there was a cemetery next to the border. So we know that there were big groups of Jewish settlers coming to Poland in the 13th, 14th, and earlier also in the 12th century. And many of them would decide to live in the cities like Kazimierz. It was very close to Kraków. It was very close to the capital of Poland. But of course, it was cheaper. It was easier to live here. And the very first group of Jews to arrive here to the city of Kazimierz were Jews from Prague, from today's Czech Republic. In the 14th century, in 1389, there was big pogrom, persecution of Jews there in Prague, and many of them decided that they are going to leave that city, they will move somewhere else. And they heard about Poland, they heard about Krakow, and they decided to come here. They were religious, they were Orthodox, so they built a synagogue, the very first synagogue in Krakow, which we are going to see later on during our tour. But speaking of synagogues, we are actually now standing in front of one of the most important synagogues in Krakow, one of the most important synagogues in Poland, and I would say one of the most important synagogues in Europe. And if you look at the sign above the entrance to the synagogue, it says in Hebrew, Beit HaKnesset Hadash Berama Zatzal. So the new synagogue of a blessed memory of a Rabbi Remo. The first part of the name, the new synagogue, already tells us something, yes? After the first synagogue was built, later on decision was made to build a new synagogue. But the second part of the name, so the Remo synagogue, it's even more important for us. Who was this person who gave his own name to this very important synagogue? Remo, this is actually an acronym from the name of very famous Rabbi Moshe Isserles. Rabbi Moshe Isserles, he was a son of man whose name was Israel and who was a founder of the synagogue. The synagogue is actually pretty small. It's not huge. It's not, at least from outside, very impressive. Yes, from inside it has beautiful decoration, but from outside it looks actually quite modest. So how it became such an important place for Jews from Krakow and for European Jews in general, this was place of many pilgrimages already before the war. So Rabbi Moshe Isserles was not only the chief rabbi of Krakow, he was not only the main judge in the local religious court called Beit Din, he was also the rector of the local yeshiva here in Krakow. But in addition to all of that, he wrote a lot of important books, especially commentaries to the book of Torah, to Talmud. And he wrote also a commentary to book written by another rabbi. That other rabbi I'm talking about, he wrote Shulchan Aruch. His name was Joseph Caro. He was born in Spain. Shulchan Aruch, as the collection of customs and traditions of Sephardic Jews, became kind of this very, very important book for people to learn about their customs and traditions from. And Rabbi Moshe Isserles from Krakow wrote a commentary to that book, which was called Hamapa. Shulchan Aruch, just to remind you, means the set table, and Hamapa means the tablecloth. So our Rabbi Moshe Isserles, wrote the Ashkenazi commentary to Shulchan Aruch. So many traditions, many melodies of prayers, many gestures, many elements, even of the attire of the most religious Orthodox people. You know, this comes from this little synagogue here, which you can see just behind me, just behind my back. So as I said, already before the war, there were a lot of pilgrims coming here. They were praying in the synagogue, but they were also praying at the small cemetery, of course, which is now called the Rema Cemetery. Grave of Rabbi Moshe Isserles survived the war, and this was actually first in post-war Krakow functioning synagogue. So if you are ever here in Krakow and you want to visit the synagogue, let me tell you, it has to be this one. It was actually recently renovated. It's really beautiful. So you should visit that for sure. Once again, synagogues are open for visitors. So we are very happy about that. Okay, let's continue our walk. Let's move on to another very important place in Kazimierz. Because during our tour, we are going to be mostly talking and learning about the pre-war time. Yes, as I said, this was the center of Jewish life before the war. But there are many places here in Kazimierz which remind us about what happened here during the time of the Nazi occupation. And one of them has to be this monument, which commemorates victims of the Holocaust from Krakow. It was put here in 1970s by the Nissenbaum Family Foundation. And it was put in this particular place because, as I said, it used to be the cemetery. And you can see a lot of little stones and rocks laying all over to commemorate those who perished during the time of the occupation. And you can see the plaque with commemoration in 3 different languages. In English, we have another one, of course, in Polish, and the third one is in Hebrew. So what is actually written on this monument? What is so important for us while we are looking at this? First of all, it informs us about the number of victims of the Holocaust from Krakow. What you should know is that before the war, there were 68,000 Jews living here in Krakow. They were 25% of all the people who lived in the city. Every 4th person who lived in Krakow before the war was Jewish. So when Nazis came here, immediately they decided that Krakow is going to be the city free of Jews. So initially at the beginning of the war, a lot of people were sent away, yes, from Krakow to the eastern part of Poland, where later many different camps were established. So when in 1941, the ghetto was established in the city, only about 18,000 Jews still were here in the city of Krakow. And then they were sent to the ghetto, and from the ghetto to the camps. So now we know that from 68,000 Jews who lived in Krakow before the war, only 3,000 survived. Yeah, so 65,000 victims of the Holocaust from the city of Krakow, killed in different camps, mostly in Bełżec, which was camp close to the nowadays Polish-Ukrainian border, and of course to Auschwitz-Birkenau camp as well. But here in Kazimierz, you can find traces of this life and of the tragedy of the Jews in many different places. We have this plaque which commemorates the victims of the Holocaust, but I think what reminds us about Jewish presence even better are places like this. As you can see, this very, very old building, this huge, massive door. But when you get a little closer, what you can see is the place where mezuzah used to be. So those scars are still here. Even if so many years has passed, even if now the number of Jews in Krakow is significantly smaller, you can still see that in almost every single house in this neighborhood, some Jewish family lived before the war. And speaking of the Jewish families, I probably would be able to give you a separate tour only about those Jewish families which lived here in Kazimierz, but I want to tell you about one. Actually, I want to tell you the story about one very important lady. She was born in the greenhouse, which you can see just in front of you. We have a red one and we have a pink one, and between them, there is this tenement. Of course, you can pass by without noticing any special about this building. But as I said, this very famous lady was born there. Her name was Helena Rubinstein. I assume some of you heard about Helena Rubinstein before. She was the one who created this big cosmetics company called HR. So of course, from her name, Helena Rubinstein, till the end of her life, she used to say and repeat over and over again, the company is me, my company is me. So even the name of the company came from the name of Helena Rubinstein. So as I said, she was born here in Kazimierz, in the greenhouse over there. It was big family. Helena had 6 sisters, so her parents had 7 daughters. They wanted their daughters to get married. They wanted their daughters to settle down, but that wasn't the plan of our Helena Rubinstein. She wanted to travel. She wanted to explore. She even fell in love with a non-Jewish boy, brought this boy home, said, "Mom, Dad, we are in love and we are getting married." Her parents, of course, said, "That's impossible. You are not going to do it." And they sent her for 2 years to her uncle to Vienna. She spent 2 years in Vienna and she thought, I want to travel. I want to continue this amazing journey. And eventually, after writing many, many letters, she received an invitation from her uncle in Australia. So she left Poland, she left Europe, and she moved to Australia. And initially, she thought it was the worst decision of her life. It was definitely too hot for her. Well, now it would be definitely too hot for her also in Poland. And she didn't know the language and she didn't know any people there. So she thought she is only going to make enough money to get the tickets back home. And then she will be back here safe with her family. But she started to work in the shop of her uncle there in Australia. And she realized she made a lot of new friends. And those new friends would always tell her, Helena, you look so beautiful. Your skin is so nice and glowing and moisturized. And they were jealous and they were asking, how was she able to achieve that beautiful complexion? And she told them, listen, my mom used to make this special cream just for us in Poland. And now I make the cream for myself. So if you want, I can make some for you. So she started the production of her cream, and she started to sell it to her friends and then friends of her friends. And then she opened her first shop, and then her first laboratory, and then her first factory. And she made a huge career there in Australia. That gave her a possibility to move back here to Europe, where she lived in Paris and in London. And she opened their first beauty salons. So ladies were coming there and she would tell them how to apply those creams and make the face massages. And again, a huge success. She had friends like Pablo Picasso, who made her amazing portrait. You can Google it later on. That's your homework. And then Salvador Dali designed packaging of one of her famous powders. So she was really a true businesswoman. And when she had everything she wanted here in Europe, there was one more place to go, of course, the United States. She made her way to New York City. But let me tell you, it wasn't so easy there. There was a lot of competition. For example, very famous Elizabeth Arden. Elizabeth Arden already had her own company and shops, and Helena knew she had to come up with some new ideas. And that's exactly what she did. She started as a very first person to sell two versions of her cream, day cream and a night cream. And let me tell you, we are still victims of what Helena Rubinstein did. So later on, she was the first one to put on the market mascara for eyelashes in the way we know it right now, with the wands and in the tube and so on. So she was very, very successful. And she continued her life in the United States, and she was even called the Empress of Beauty. I really like that she, used to tell a lot of little lies to make her company more successful. And probably my favorite one was about her age. She used to tell people that she was older than she actually was to show, look at me, I'm so old, but I still look beautiful thanks to my cosmetics. So Helena Rubinstein, ladies and gentlemen, we are now, of course, waiting for a Hollywood production about her. So as I was talking about Helena Rubinstein, we actually made our way to another very important place. Let me show you where we are right now. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now standing in front of the old synagogue, the main synagogue of Kraków, which is also the oldest synagogue in Poland. Of course, it doesn't look like the oldest synagogue in Poland because it was renovated many, many times. But initially, when it was built in year 1407, it was one small building with only one main prayer room, prayer hall, just for men. And later on, the section with triangle roof was added as a women's section. So this was the main synagogue of Kraków till the time of the war. It wasn't the only one, though, of course. There were about 100 synagogues, prayer houses, prayer rooms, and shtibels of Hasidic Jews here in Kraków and in Kazimierz all together. But of course, this one was the most important one. What happened here in the old synagogue during the time of the war, during the time of the Nazi occupation? Well, it was used by Germans as a warehouse where they kept ammunition and explosive materials, which unfortunately exploded at some point and destroyed roof of the synagogue. So after the war, the Jewish community of Kraków, they didn't have enough money to renovate it. That's why they made an agreement with the Historical Museum of Kraków to turn this place to the museum. And that's how the oldest synagogue in Poland, it's now a museum. of Jewish culture, customs, traditions. But let me tell you, a couple of years ago, two people I know, he is Jewish from Canada, she is Polish and Jewish. They got married in this synagogue. They decided to bring back some Jewish life to this place. And I think it's a beautiful and uplifting story. Let's have a look at this wall here. You can actually see two things. The monument just in front of you commemorates Polish, non-Jewish fighters from the time of partisans from the time of the Second World War. They were killed here in this particular spot by the Germans. And just behind it, we have the wall. This is fragment of the original wall of Kazimierz. As I said, this city was established in the 14th century. So parts of this wall are actually from that time. What you can see here also is that we have some stairs, which I took to get to the synagogue. It was actually built like this in purpose. So Poland, as I told you initially, was this country with big religious tolerance, but there was also a time when synagogues couldn't be higher than nearby churches. And you can see the old synagogue here was built under the level of the street. So slowly we'll be leaving this lovely area. Actually, it's called Szeroka Street. But as I said, this was the center of Jewish life. Now you can see around here a lot of Jewish style restaurants. I don't know if you're able to hear the music, but there is a klezmer band playing some songs, singing in Yiddish. And this place, it is very popular right now among tourists. People come here when they want to feel the atmosphere of Jewish Kazimierz. But let me tell you, Kazimierz has transformed quite a lot from the pre-war time till now. I would say there were a few phases in this transformation. First one was when this was the Jewish district before the war, and then Jews were sent away from Kraków and then sent away to the camps. Then after the war, Kazimierz was empty. The buildings were here, but there were no people. The area was almost completely empty. And then in 1970s and 1980s, transformation of Kazimierz started. What was the transformation all about? Let me tell you a little bit about it. First of all, in 1970s, two groups of people started to come here to Kazimierz. Those were artists and students. The area was a little abandoned, run down, forgotten, also considered dangerous. So it was a perfect place for artists. The atmosphere was great. It was great to create, maybe not that great to study because students were tempted by this artistic nightlife, but people loved this area. So let me tell you, those who got apartments here or even the whole buildings, when they were very, very cheap, well, now they are extremely lucky and happy people. So the first reason why Kazimierz transformed so much was this wave of newcomers. Then the second reason, kind of connected to that first one, was when at the end of 1980s, Jewish Culture or Jewish Culture Festival was established by two Polish non-Jewish guys. Why Polish non-Jewish men decided to start the Jewish Culture Festival? Simply, they were thinking, how can we allow 1,000 years of Jewish culture to be destroyed by 5 years of the war, 5 years of the Holocaust? We got to remind people about what is missing, what they've lost, and what was part of Polish history and Polish culture for such a long time. So they started the Jewish Culture Festival. Initially, klezmer music festival. And then the festival has grown. And now every year at the end of June, beginning of July, we have here in Kraków, one of the biggest Jewish culture festivals in the world. 20,000 people come here to participate in lectures, in classes, in workshops, in parties and tours. And at the end, there is a huge concert, 7 hours long concert in front of the old synagogue. And people are dancing and singing. And it's called Shalom on Szeroka Street. But local journalists already called it the Jewish Woodstock. So definitely you can come back next year to join us for the Jewish Culture Festival. And the second reason why this place has changed so much was the fact that Steven Spielberg came here to film Schindler's List. Of course, the story of Oskar Schindler is a story of a member of a Nazi party who saved more than 1,000 Jews from Krakow ghetto. He hired them in his factory, and then he decided to take these people with him to another factory outside of Poland at the end of the war. And that's how more than 1,000 Jews from Krakow were saved. So when Steven Spielberg came here, he thought, well, I'm gonna film this movie here. And maybe some of you remember, or maybe you've heard or read about how huge success that movie was, that there were hundreds of people coming here to follow the steps of Oskar Schindler or the steps of Steven Spielberg here in Krakow. And thanks to the movie Schindler's List, tourism here definitely picked up even more. So from empty, abandoned, and actually very sad area, Kazimierz became not only the new popular area, but also center of a nightlife. So let me show you around a little bit more. Maybe you're already tired of looking at my face. So let's have a look at those beautiful little cafes and pubs and bars, which were opened here in 1970s and in 1980s. When we turn back for a moment, you can also see another synagogue. This is an Isaac synagogue built in the 17th century. It was founded by men whose name was Isaac Jakubowicz, and he was very wealthy man living here. You can see the synagogue is really, really huge. Now it's under the renovation, but hopefully soon the renovation will be done and we'll be able to visit once again this amazing synagogue to see inscriptions and original interiors from the 17th century. Let me tell you, this is actually quite, first of all, surprising, and then it sometimes sounds even like a miracle. How come in the occupied Poland, in the city of Krakow, which was so important, not only for the Poles before the war, but later on also for the Nazis, how come the Jewish district survived almost untouched? Everything we look at is actually original. Yes, every synagogue. When we were there in Szeroka Street, all the buildings, house of Helena Rubinstein, and other houses we've seen, this is all original, wasn't destroyed. Basically, idea of the Germans was that Kraków is going to be a German city eventually at some point, that Kraków is going to be announced officially second most important city in the Third Reich after Berlin. So when war started, the name of the city of Kraków was changed from Kraków to German Krakow. Later on, the language officially became German. The currency was changed, and the name of a main square of Kraków was changed from Rynek Główny, so simply the main square, to Adolf Hitler Platz. And in this German city, with Adolf Hitler Platz in the middle, there was still a Jewish district. Yes, there was still Kazimierz. So Nazis decided that they are not going to destroy the Jewish quarter. They decided that they are going to use it for themselves. From 1941, when ghetto was established, Jews were no longer here. And that is why synagogues were used as storehouses or warehouses, and people who were expelled from the area where the ghetto was established came here to live. So simple reasons, but something very, very unusual happened here. Only 1 hour driving from Auschwitz-Birkenau camp, only 1 hour driving from the place where more than 1 million people were killed during the war. We still have this original pre-war Jewish quarter, one of the most well-preserved Jewish districts in entire Europe. So the square we entered right now, it's another very, very important place here in Kazimierz. This is a new square. We also call it in Polish the Plac Nowy. The building in the middle of Plac Nowy, in Polish we call it Okrąglak, the round one, because it is a round building. So before the war, this was a Jewish kosher slaughterhouse. This was the place where women were coming to buy kosher meat, to buy kosher poultry, and then to prepare dinners for their families. So This was another, in another sense, another center of Kazimierz, the second most important place. As you can see, as it used to be some kind of a market, it still is a flea market now. Every Sunday there is a big market here where you can get clothes and shoes and whatever you can actually dream of. And at night, huge lines, queues of people waiting to get something really, really special from these windows you can see around this building here. So this is a place where you can now get nothing kosher, unfortunately, but traditional Polish fast food, which is called zapiekanka. Zapiekanka is half of baguette with mushrooms and cheese and a lot of ingredients, meats and sauces and vegetables. It is very unhealthy. It is extremely heavy, but it is also really, really, really cheap. And in the middle of the night, trust me, after the party, it really tastes like heaven. So a lot of people come here, especially at night, especially in the evening, to get their zapiekanki. And you can actually now have one more look at the architecture of this part of Kazimierz. So we are now looking at what is a hotel, but it used to be the biggest Talmud Torah school in Kraków for more than 1,000 students. And here, this yellow building in the corner is also very popular because it is a place where one of the most popular bars in Kazimierz are. And this place is called Alchemy. So it was opened here in 1980s. And since there, nothing has changed. You can come here, you can have a beer, you can have a shot of cherry vodka, you can come here to party, to dance during the summer. So extremely nice part of Kazimierz we are walking through right now. Down this little street, there are a lot of little shops and restaurants. So you can, again, get here a drink, but you can also get here Italian kosher ice cream. How come there is Italian kosher ice cream here in Kraków? So there is this Italian guy from Sicily, Antonio, who lives here for years. He has a small pizza place, he has this small ice cream place, and we all love this ice cream. And we were like been eating it every single day. And I saw one day a rabbi who I know went there to negotiate with Antonio. And he was negotiating for such a long time that they made those Italian ice cream kosher. So you can have on a hot day like today a kosher ice cream in Kazimierz made by the real Italian guy. So the street we are walking through right now, it's one of these many small and charming streets of Kazimierz, and it's called the Street of Esther. And you might be familiar with the name of Esther, but the biblical one. Let me tell you, there was one more Esther, the one who lived here in Kazimierz, the one who fell in love with nobody else but Polish King Kazimierz the Great. Yes, exactly the same one who established the city of Kazimierz. So they apparently met on one of the lovely streets of Kazimierz. He looked at her, she looked at him, and they were in love immediately. Of course, they couldn't be together officially, but the legends about the houses, the castles he built for her, and the children they had together, and this huge love they had together are still in our hearts. And in the city of Kazimierz, there is a Street of Esther, so they can be together forever. So we are approaching now one of our last stops on our route, which is actually a Jewish community center. Let me show you how the building of the Jewish community center looks like. Is this big building now? As you can see, a lot of colors of the Ukrainian flag. You can see some signs in Ukrainian here as well. I will explain in a moment why it looks like this. But initially, I want to start with the history of this place, of the first Jewish community center in Poland, the very first Jewish community center in Kraków as well, of course. But before we will do it, let me tell you about how it all started. So in 2002, very important person you may heard of, Prince Charles, Prince of Wales, came to Kraków. In year 2002, it was his first official visit to Poland. And Prince Charles came here for this official visit. And part of the visit was a tour of Auschwitz-Birkenau camp. But of course, people who organized this trip, they not only wanted him to see Auschwitz-Birkenau camp, they wanted him to meet some members of the Jewish community. So when Prince Charles came to Kraków, he had the pleasure of meeting some of the Holocaust survivors. He asked them, what do you need here in Kraków? What I can do for you? And they said, listen, we don't want another synagogue. We don't want more of those places. What we want is a place where we can be together and spend time together. So Prince Charles turned to the organization called World Jewish Relief, and together with them and with the local Jewish community, they built and opened first Jewish community center in Poland. The opening took place in 2008. And since then, this is home for Jews of Krakow. And now there are about 800 members here at the Krakow JCC. The rule to become a member of the JCC is to have a Jewish background, at least one Jewish grandparent. And people come here, and especially those who are also, let's put it nicely, those who are discovering the Jewish roots. What it means? Well, after the war, a lot of Jews in Poland changed their last names. Those who survived and came back, they didn't want anybody to know that they are Jewish. A lot of those people also decided not to tell their family members that the family had a Jewish background. So throughout 50 years of communism, which we had here in Poland after the war, there were many people who lived in this country but had no idea that they are Jewish. So imagine when in 1989, communism in Poland collapsed. And a lot of those older people, these Holocaust survivors, started to think, well, this is my moment. This is my time to tell my children, my grandchildren that we are Jewish. So people started to discover their Jewish roots, but they had absolutely no idea what to do with this knowledge, yes, how to act knowing that their parents or grandparents or family before the war were not Jewish. So they were looking for a place to go and ask some questions. And luckily in 2008, Jewish Community Center was opened. So I would say the biggest groups in this community are still seniors, still a lot of them amazing Holocaust survivors with such beautiful, beautiful stories. I was volunteering here for about 4 years during my studies. So let me tell you, an amazing opportunity to hang out with survivors, to have a tea with them, to have a shot of vodka with them, to talk with them about their lives. Beautiful, beautiful experience. One of the best experiences of my entire life. And then the second group here, adults, and they're of course students. But a couple years ago, what they did was something really, really special. They opened first in post-war Kraków, Jewish kindergarten and preschool. So now not only Jewish life, but also Jewish education are present in the city. So what Jewish Community Center does nowadays is also really remarkable, because the moment war started in Ukraine, the moment of invasion of Russia to Ukraine, they decided we were once the people in need. We were once those who needed help from anybody and we didn't get it. So what they decided to do here, they established a little center for refugees. And the center is open since day one of the war till now. Every single day, there is a long line in front of the JCC. Those people are coming here to get some food, to get some support, and sometimes only to talk to somebody friendly here in this new country, in this new place. And I got to tell you, I'm actually quite proud that it's the Jewish Community Center here in Kraków, that they are providing such an amazing help. So it's not only now a home for local Jews, it's not only a home for local non-Jews who are interested in the Jewish culture, but also for all of those who come to Poland with this huge hope for the better future. So they can now build a Jewish future, and they can now build a better future for others. Thank you very much. If there are any questions, I will be happy to answer them right now.
Well, thank you so much, Anna Maria. You can't see because we purposely, took the chat away, but I'm just getting tons and tons of comments of how wonderful this is and how informative and professional and et cetera, just really beautiful comments. So thank you to everyone who's sending those. And I will encourage you all to send me questions as well. We do have a couple that have already come in, some just general comments. So I'd love to read those out to you.
Of course.
First and foremost, Marcia wanted to express that there was once a Broadway musical about Helena Rubinstein and Elizabeth Arden that she saw probably around 15 to 20 years ago, and she really enjoyed it. And there was never any mention about that she was from Poland near Krakow. So she certainly is learning quite a bit on this tour. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit exactly where, I know we didn't get to see a map necessarily, where the Jewish quarter in Krakow was, and again, speak a little bit to how large it was, I guess, in reference to the rest of the city.
Of course, it always depends from the period of time we are talking about. But as I said before the war, the number of Jews in Krakow was about 68,000. But we got to remember that, of course, not all of them lived in the Jewish quarter. Like what we have seen, when I was walking around, that was actually the majority of the Jewish part of the Jewish district. But the whole city of Kazimierz and the whole district with Jewish and Christian part was actually much bigger. What I think it is very important fact to learn about Kazimierz is that it used to be a city established on an island between two branches of the Vistula River. So now there is only one branch of the river because the other one dried out. But initially there was a natural border between the city of Krakow and the city of Kazimierz. So even if they were so close, only 15 minutes walk from the place where I am now to the main square of Krakow, still those two cities were kind of separated because there was only one bridge connecting them. And it was later on in the 18th century when that other part of the river was turned into a street, and finally those two cities had a chance to be combined. Yes, and Kazimierz became a district of Krakow. But what I also want to add to this, as you can see, I can't stop talking, is that when I came to Krakow and when I started to learn about Kazimierz, my understanding was all the Jews lived here and all the other people lived in the other parts of the city. And let me tell you, a couple of years ago, I'm here in Kazimierz, I'm here in Krakow with a lady, Holocaust survivor, who came from Australia. And I'm here with her and her son. She was born in Krakow before the war. So we are in the main square and she goes, this is where my cousin lived. This is where we used to get ice cream. This is where my friends lived. And I was so excited. And then I was even more excited to go with her to Kazimierz. We come here and she says nothing. And I go, oh, so maybe some bad memories connected to this place. And she goes, no, I just don't know this area because my father was a university professor. We considered ourselves assimilated Jews. And she said, my dad would never let me come here to this part of the city. We lived exclusively in the old town, and that was our life in Krakow before the war. And that was an important lesson for me as well. I thought, really, of course, for many Jews who lived in Poland before the war, the fact that they were Jewish wasn't the most important part of their existence. Yes, this lady definitely thought about herself as Jewish, but also Polish, and the daughter of a professor, and the cousin, and the sister, and it's just an anecdote.
Right. Fantastic. Thank you, and keep drinking that water. I know it's very hot where you are right now.
The first sip after the whole tour felt like
best.
A new life.
Trust me, I know. I know what that's all about. It's incredible how you're so enthusiastic and giving so much of yourself in such a short period of time. So thank you once again. Two quick comments, more logistical. Just want to confirm that it's okay if I give your email address to many people who are asking, who would love to get in touch with you and follow up about hopefully in-person tours when they come visit, and perhaps some other general comments. The other question that came through is about if anyone would like to make a donation to the JCC, if that's possible. Maybe you could let me know and we can send it out, Mara, in a follow-up email.
Yeah, definitely.
Go ahead.
Definitely, yes. Definitely can give out my email to whoever needs it, so not only for tours but also questions, comments. I am happy to do that. And for the JCC, definitely there is also this like website, Friends of JCC Krakow, which people can find, and this is how they can make a donation for the community and also for the Ukrainian refugees coming here. So that would be really, really nice.
Great. So we'll probably take a quick look and put that in the chat, Friends of JCC Krakow, and go from there. So I'm just going to go, there's a lot of questions that are coming in. I'm just going to kind of go in order as they come in. So if you could comment on two things real quick, as we have another 10 minutes left. How many Jews live in Krakow currently today? And of course, the question that always comes up, can you please speak to the fact of anti-Semitism? If you've seen it, if you've heard it, if you feel it, what's the update on that in Krakow or in general Poland as well?
Okay, so let's start with the number of Jews in Krakow now. It is actually really, really difficult question. It is one of the most difficult questions you can ask because we simply don't know. Yes, because first of all, what is the definition? Do we only count the ones who are halakhically Jewish, or anybody who sees themselves as Jewish, or maybe those who have at least one Jewish grandparent, like, you know, it was enough during the war to end up in the ghetto and then in the camp. So why not now enough to become a member of the Jewish community or consider yourself Jewish? So this is the first question. Then there is no official registry now, except that there is an Orthodox community, but they have about 120 members. There is a Reform community, maybe up to 100 members, maybe a little bit more. And there is JCC with about 800 members right now. So I would say the optimistic number would be about 1,000 Jews living in Krakow nowadays. Definitely bigger Jewish communities you can find now in Warsaw. There is one in Łódź, there is one in Wrocław, so other Polish cities. It's not like Krakow is the only place. There are Jews living now all over Poland. I really liked what once the chief rabbi of Poland, Rabbi Michael Szudrik, said. How many Jews are in Poland currently? Well, something about 30,000 and 100,000. Who knows? So if the chief rabbi says that, well, why cannot I say it? So, and the second question, maybe a little bit more difficult and definitely more complex, is the question about anti-Semitism. Because unfortunately, my answer cannot be different. There is anti-Semitism in Poland, of course, nowadays. There is anti-Semitism, unfortunately, all over the world. In every single country, there is anti-Semitism. I believe there are different kinds of anti-Semitism. And what happened in Poland before the war, there were a lot of anti-Semitic rules introduced. We know that 1930s in Europe, that anti-Semitism didn't start with Adolf Hitler. It didn't start in the Nazi Germany. It was all over the continent before the war. Even here in Poland, even in the cities like Kraków, where at the universities, there were rules against the number of Jewish students and the number of the Jewish professors. And that there were, of course, earlier on in our history, also pogroms against the Jews. So what happened after the war was that the tension between a lot of Polish people and a lot of Jews who survived was even stronger. Yeah. So after the war, it is very dark and very difficult period of our history to talk about, but we definitely cannot skip it. We cannot, just close our eyes and move on. That there was a lot of anti-Semitism in Poland after the war, even pogroms. So there were people who survived the war and they came back to their homeland and they were killed by people who used to be their neighbors. Yeah, so very dark period of our history, but it happened. The only thing we can do about it is to apologize and to learn from the mistakes. What happened later? Later, we had 50 years of communism. When I asked my parents, when I was at school, we already started to learn about the war and all of that. And I asked them, like, oh, what do you know about Judaism? Do you know any Jews? They said, we know nothing and we don't know any Jews. But the reason for that is nobody taught them that. Nobody told them about the Jewish history of Poland. They only went to Auschwitz. That was an obligatory trip and still is for all the students in our country. But nobody would tell them, oh, this was the Jewish history of Poland. This is what Jews brought to our culture and our history and literature and music, and that half of Polish Nobel Prize winners, or even more, were Polish Jews, and all of that. My parents had absolutely no education, but what they would hear during this periods of anti-Semitic propaganda in Poland during the communism, when Communist Party wanted to get rid of Jews from the party, was that Jews want your money, that they want your jobs, that they are successful because they are stealing from others, and so on and so forth, and all this, full of prejudices, anti-Semitic narration. Some of the people didn't believe in that, of course, but some of the people did. Yes, I studied Jewish studies at the university, and I remember when I told about it for the first time to my grandfather. My grandfather was born before the war. He went to school before the war for 3 years, and then war started. He survived, but after the war, he had to work. So that was all he got, 3 years of education and going to church every Sunday. So when I told him that I studied Jewish studies, he asked me why. Jews are the ones who killed Jesus. And for many people, that is the only thing they know. So there is still a lot of anti-Semitism. But I think the way to fight anti-Semitism in Poland is to educate, because a lot of people are going to repeat what they've heard from the media, from their friends, from their parents very often, but they are not going to make any bigger research about it. But if they would have more education at school about pre-war Jewish life, if they would learn more about also the problems and the conflicts and the issues between Poland Jews, they would maybe understand better, and there will be less anti-Semitism. Let me tell you, there are no anti-Semitic attacks on the streets. Nobody is being bullied for being Jewish. Nobody is being attacked for wearing a kippah, or there are hundreds of people who come here to visit Kraków every Friday evening, Saturday morning. They go to the synagogue, they sing on the streets, they dance on the streets. This is the place where they can feel definitely safe. Yeah, so it is not that Poland is a place where you have to be afraid of being Jewish. Poland is just a place which needs a lot of work to be done in terms of education, not only about Judaism, about every other religion. And especially
I'm just going to jump in and say the work that you're doing right here, right now, and also day to day with walking around is just exactly what you're talking about. And we're going to have to save the chat and send it to you, because it's a shame that it's not a shame, because I know you'd be getting very distracted, but there's so many comments coming in, and it's just fantastic. People saying that they've learned more with you in an hour than they've ever have when they went to visit Krakow, and how inspirational you are, and how an amazing tour guide you are. And all of this is just really a credit to the work that you're doing. And we're so grateful for it. I'm so grateful for it. I just want to say that I put in Anna Maria's email address in the chat. You can do it again. Anna Maria, just confirm for me, that same email is the one you have with PayPal, right? It's connected. So
yes.
People were asking if they wanted to give you like an extra tip, or gratuity, I guess, as if you were our tour guide, because you were our tour guide. Then you can send that PayPal gratuity through PayPal and to your email address, which is always a great thing. I just want to jump in because other people were expressing, more information about tours like this. I do want to share, for those who don't know, our project, which is on jewishmallorca.com. We actually do this every Thursday, and it's so fantastic that we're working with myjewishlearning.com once a month. But we have different places that we go to, as you can see on the screen. This month in July, we're going to different islands around the Caribbean. In August, we're actually going to the end of the alphabet. The V is for Vatican, the W is for Warsaw, not too far. Y is for Yemen, and Z is for Zimbabwe. So if you go to jewishmallorca.com/travel, I know there's a number of people on this call who already participate on our weekly Thursdays, which is fantastic. A couple one other question, because I know you have to go and we want to be respectful for your time. let's just ask you, this is a new one that I had never received before. A comment came in asking if you could comment on the role of the Galicia Jewish Museum, which is quite impressive and perhaps, used as a venue for Jewish education and history. Maybe just a final comment on that, and also the work that the JCC does in terms of their Ride for the Living program. I know you're familiar with Jonathan Ornstein and all of his great work. Just a little bit of, where people can find more information about that.
Okay, so two things. First of all, the Galicia Jewish Museum, absolutely amazing museum, opened in early 2000s by a British photographer whose name was Chris Schwartz. Galicia, the name of that museum, comes from the name of the region that used to be in pre-war Poland, the region at the southern and eastern part of our country. Galicia was actually divided to two kind of districts. There was Western Galicia with capital in Kraków, and there was Eastern Galicia with capital in Lviv. And that was the area where a lot of Ashkenazi Jews lived, and it was just this part of the country they felt like it was their place. Like, they would call themselves Galicianers, like the Jews of Litva called themselves Litvaks. So they were Galicianers here, and they were very proud of that. They had their own tradition and so on. So that photographer, when he came here to Poland, he traveled through Galicia region, he took tons of photographs, and he decided, I'm going to buy an old factory building and create a museum and display my photos there. And this is exactly what he did. So now there is this big exhibition there called Traces of Memory about Jewish cemeteries and synagogues and what happened with them since the war throughout the time. And they have also some new exhibitions coming in about Jewish families, about Jewish art and street art, and they have meetings with Holocaust survivors, they have meetings with righteous Gentiles, they have amazing program for schools, Jewish students coming here from all over the world, and Polish students coming here to learn. So an amazing museum, Galicia, would definitely recommend to visit if you are here. Also beautiful space to visit. And of course, the local JCC, what they do, I can give an entire separate tour about how amazing place this place is. What they do every year, it's a bicycle ride called Ride for the Living. And it's a bike ride from the gate of Auschwitz-Birkenau camp to the gate of JCC Kraków to commemorate the victims, to honor the survivors, and to give people hope for a better Jewish future in Poland. So I think this is really an important one to mention.
Anna
Thank you
Maria,
so much. Passing it over to you, Mara. Thank you.
Sorry, Danny. I was going to echo you and saying this was wonderful. Thank you so much, Anna Maria. We are getting loads of comments about how much people have learned. So I also wanted to share my thanks. We are also getting lots of questions about recordings because we've had a jammed packed an hour of information, and people may want to rewatch and share with their family members and their friends. If you've registered for this presentation, which of course you have because you've received the link, you'll be sent out a recording and also a link to our past tours as well. And so we hope that you enjoy all the learning experiences we have here at My Jewish Learning. Thank you all for your comments and for joining us. And once again, Anna Maria, for your time and your knowledge and the wonderful tour you just gave us.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Such pleasure to work with you guys, and such pleasure to be able to show to so many people our beautiful city of Kazimierz. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.